Hey, and we are back again. It is a pleasure to be with you again, my audience. And if you're joining us for the first time, we welcome you. My name is Michael Woodson, and my partner Sanan is with us in the background. We have a special guest this week, and as all of you know, this 2025 has really been an accelerating year in this industry. The hospitality industry is undergoing a significant transformation driven by the rapid advancements in technology. And as we enter in our season, about our fourth show for this for 2025. We are doing the job of really where hospitality and technology come together. And it is my pleasure to be here. But joining me today is a special guest. And of course, did the saying when I grew up working for a company, they used to say this saying: "No one ever lost their job because they worked for or bought IBM." So we have Danny Barnett, Vice President of Emerging Technologies and Engineering at IBM Research. Welcome, Danny. Pleasure for you to have you here. Welcome.
It's a wonderful opportunity to be here.
All right.
Thank you for offering me.
So, well, let me tell our audience about who you are. And so, yeah, as I said, Vice President of Emerging Technology Engineering at IBM. He leads the development and advancements of I- IT systems and infrastructure, including the platforms that support training, large language models, the LLMs for the AI environment. And within over 20 years at IBM, Danny brings deep expertise in software engineering, systems architect, and innovation management. And he began his journey at IBM, through the acquisition of what then Lotus. And those who were might be a little older, they remember Lotus Notes, all right, from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Yes, and then later holding leadership roles in IBM software and the chief information officer prior to IBM. He worked for a company called Eurotunnel in both France and in the UK. Do you speak French? You
My
speak French
friend,
and English?
yeah, my French is a little rusty, but
Okay,
speak.
but you have, right? So he brings this international experience to this global and gives us the global perspective. So since relocating from London, he's in New York in 2015, and it is a pleasure for him. Coming to you live from Brooklyn. I bring you my friend here. So, by the way, here's some unique things about him. He lives with his husband. He's Yemi, a fashion designer. All right, and interesting. A proud and visible leader in the LGBTQ community. Danny is also one of the faces of IBM's working, positive, innovative, advocating for the support and inclusion of HIV plus employees in the workplace. So, welcome. Pleasure
And
to have you here.
in fact, I'm wearing this T-shirt because I've just come in from the AIDS walk in New York today.
Thank you. All
So,
right. Well,
those of you who are watching, find my LinkedIn profile and you can sponsor me. It's for a good cause.
excellent. So we're here. So as I mentioned, innovation. You've been around. Obviously, the biggest innovation is AI. It is here. It is. The beast has now been launched.
Yep.
Consumer at the consumer level. Obviously, you probably had something to do with Watson within the IBM environment.
Yep.
Um, and here we are today in that individual. So the future now is we're looking at every industry, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you are in the AI world.
Yes.
Whether you want to or not, you either have impact or you are adopting it, and it's becoming a way of life for you and everything that we do. So, with that said, let me ask you a couple of questions and talk about future of hospitality tech. Get your comments on it. So, what do you see as the most transformative technology in hospitality over the next 5 years? You've seen this. You've lived in the world of Watson before the consumer. Got a
Right.
hold of what we see as artificial intelligence. What do you see?
Yeah. I think. Obviously, the answer broadly is AI, artificial intelligence of one form
Mhm.
or another. But I think what we've been living in is a world where artificial intelligence is doing information retrieval. So
Mm.
it's been very good at going out and searching the web and finding some results and presenting them to you and producing a synthesis. It's very good at that as well, both from the knowledge that it has and the knowledge that's current on the web. And those models are getting better and better. So the ability to pull lots of data sources together and do that for people has been one of the things that's been most useful up to now. But of course, what we're seeing, I think, in future is really two things. So the ability for AI to generate stuff.
Mm.
So whether that's pictures or whether it's code or whether it's literature or whether it's marketing materials and things like that, it's just going to get better and better. So the things that it can create, I think, are going to get better and better. But the other thing that I think we're going to see in this age that we call generative computing is going to be the ability to create agents or versions of itself that can
Hmm.
then go off and do things. So that's
Multitasking, if I may say, right?
yes, exactly. I mean, at the moment, most of the things that you see are quite sequential. So it's like you do this, you get some results back, you then make up your mind about what you're going to do next. You know, rather like a human would sort through that kind of stuff. But the ability for AI to actually transact and to do
Hmm.
things on behalf of humans is going to get stronger and stronger, I think. And the technology that's needed to do that to make sure that it does it safely and sensibly has also got to has got to keep up with that. So
The
that's where
scary part, though, that's a scary, scary part of things, where you
yeah,
say multiple things enabling multiple tasks and
right,
do this, and this, not just retrieving, but actually taking the action and being proactive
right,
and acting. Yeah, one of the things that when we look at the hospitality industry and artificial intelligence is, and I've kind of put some notes here. It says artificial intelligence is revolutionizing guest services by enabling hyper personalized experience. AI driven tools such as chatbots and, as you have mentioned, and virtual assistants can handle routine
yep,
inquiries, major like manage bookings and provide tailored recommendations, enhancing guest satisfaction and freeing up staff for more complex tasks.
yes.
So it's just when we see that, you have generations of people who may not be able to embrace that. What do you think about that? They may have to, when we look at traditionalists versus a Gen Z would be more receptive, but maybe a person that's labeled as a traditional, an old individual, may not embrace that. Well, how do you think
Yeah,
about that?
so being of an older generation myself, I get a bit prickly when people start labeling capabilities based on people's when they were born, basically.
Hmm.
So I think we have to look past that, and I think what you have to do is, if you're a technologist, you have to package these technologies up in a way that makes them accessible to people from all sorts of walks of life.
Hmm.
So we think of accessibility as being people who might have some kind of impairment or whatever,
Right.
but a cognitive failure to grasp or lack of experience is also an impairment in using technologies and things. And we have to find ways as technologists to get over that and not just play to well, they grew up with games on iPads, so
Mm.
those are the people we're going to deal with, pure and simple. That's the lazy way out. So I think it's up to us as technologists to package these capabilities up in a way that everybody can take advantage of them, maybe in ways that they don't know that we can do at the moment. But that's the challenge for us, I think.
So,
And
with that said, let me ask you this then. What ways can automation enhance rather than replace human services in hospitality? What do you think? Any thoughts on that?
well, I don't work directly in hospitality, but I mean, there's a few things kind
Come
of
on.
come to
But
mind.
you, as a person, as you said,
Yeah.
who, receiver of the services, and from your thought process, let's hear that.
Yeah. So I mean, there are places in which you see this already in customer service where you're not you have almost infinite bandwidth because you're always able to get hold of an AI agent that can help you out with some of the things that AI agents are very good at.
Mhm.
It's like rebooking a hotel or changing the doing a room upgrade or something like that. Those are things that are a bit kind of humdrum for people to do, and they've been done through all sorts of automations for a long period of time. But I think this is one in which you can bring in even more. You can bring in even more intelligence and personalization through those kinds of services in a
Mhm.
way that builds on what the company knows about me, knows about might know about what's going on in the area, for example, and things.
Mhm.
So there's a whole host of things that AI agents have the bandwidth to do that human agents do not. So if you're dealing one to one with people, That's if you're doing it properly, it's occupying the whole channel, isn't it? Whereas an AI agent is able to spin itself out multiple times,
Hmm.
do all those kinds of things.
And
There's
that retrieval of information, as you mentioned earlier, leads into the next one. What role does data play in personalizing that guest journey?
Well,
What
I
do
mean,
you
I think you guys know, people who are working in hospitality already know how important it is to know your
think?
customer,
Mhm.
to build that customer loyalty and understanding.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
so that the kind of preferences that people have, whether they're likely to be parking a car, whether they're coming from an airport late at night, so you can make sure that their room's not given away or whatever and things, or they need an early checkout and early taxi or whatever to the airport and things. Those kinds of personalizations or those little touches that really make the difference between a humdrum stay and a really kind of
Mhm.
impactful, oh, this is what customer service looks like kind of stay, I think are really important. And I think AI, as I say, increases the bandwidth to be able to do that kind of stuff in
Hmm.
that just scaling out people wouldn't do. Yeah,
Well, it's kind of, it's a change, it's transformation, it's innovation, whatever you label it. But it's also forcing a change in the way we perceive things or have for a while as we came out of the pandemic.
sure.
And so it kind of like that pause took us now with an explosion of this. But now we have new with this transformation. We have people, as you know, this is the graduation season. Whether you're leaving high school or whether you're going into college, and those who are exiting the college environment and academia and going out into the real world.
Yeah,
So with that said, and preparing that next generation of the workers who are entering into, I'm talking about in an AI-enabled world, who are graduating. Today here in Boston, we have Babson, one of the big business schools. They're graduating. Boston University, big university, they're graduating. Everybody, yeah, in New York, there was large graduations going on. So,
yeah.
what key technical skills should people in hospitality students focus on today? And we have some a contingent of students who are listening, so it's very crucial for them to kind of hear it from you, since you've been at, really IBM has been around for years, and obviously one of the first really diving into technology with the days of Watson and the LLMs learning um, language management, the LLMs and the deep learning models.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Can you?
So I think the big opportunity here is the things that are missing. So if you look at all these AI models today, probably only 1% of corporate data turns up in those models because it's currently quite difficult to take a model and then to add additional information to it. And that additional information is not stuff that's out on the internet because every model can pick that up.
Hmm.
It's the data that's peculiar to your organization. And so skills that are associated with understanding the data you've got, seeing the patterns you've got in it, kind of old-fashioned
Hmm.
data science type skills, being able to present that data in a way that the models can consume, um, being able to see kind of like the insights that might be gained from that, how you keep that data clean. Those are things that are going to become ever more important
Hmm.
because without good solid data, I often say that models are a bit like, naughty children that come over to visit you. They're always the ones that find the sharp knives and the matches. Well, AI models seem to be the ones that always find the out of date data that was hiding
Hmm.
away in the intranet somewhere. So having good processes around data and understanding good data and being able to provide it and keep it current
Hmm.
in these models, it's not something that's going to go away. It's going to become ever more important. And like I say, only 1% of enterprise data is currently in models typically. So there's a huge gap there in terms of what makes any particular company a company. That's the
Hmm.
core data that they hold. Yeah. So
Right.
that's
Great
where I
point.
would be. Yeah.
Well, the data, data, data. So, with that said, let me do a reminder here for those that are out in our audience who are listening on YouTube. Drop in the section if you have any questions for me or anyone, for our guest in general. And we also welcome you to give your comments and feedback so that we can enhance the show and become better at what we're attempting to do here as we grow and organically grow the Hospitality Tech Show. So please do, by all means, your participation, it matters. If you're a student and you're curious about it and you're getting into the industry or just technology in general, we literally have a gem in front of us. And I really appreciate you being here, Danny. So you know, thank you. So please do. So let's go on to the next question. How can, when we think about the schools, and I talked about, the big graduation, they're stepping out. I myself, I'm a college professor adjunct, and I've been teaching for a long time as well in technology and information security and cybersecurity and privacy, etc., and risk management. But I want to get, how can hospitality schools better integrate technology training into their programs? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're at a kind of crossroads now in the bridge between the corporate world and the private world. So we're very much in the same situation that we were with smartphones, maybe 10 years ago, where
Hmm.
people were using smartphones in quite creative and new ways, and they were enhancing their lives. But when they came to the office, they weren't yet able to take advantage of the things that they could do on their own device. That's still true for all sorts of good reasons, mostly tied to IP protection, intellectual property protection, and security. But I think the analogy still holds, which is that even if your technology department is not yet ready to embrace perhaps all of the aspects of the latest AI models, I think exposing people to what's available and what they can do with these things is really important. And I would argue, back to your earlier question about is this just technology for people coming out of college? I'd say no. I think this is something that the let people's imaginations run riot. I think people are surprised at what these models can do. Introduce them to what they can do for them in their private lives, and they'll bring that inspiration to their work lives as well. I think, and pressure for it, as we found with phones.
Hmm.
So I think
Excuse me there.
that beyond knowing
Excuse
beyond
me.
beyond knowing the specifics of particular companies' training models, that's one thing that I'm trying to impress with all my team is like try this stuff out, use it for yourself, find out what you can do with it, bring that insight back to the office, and then we'll see what we can build that's analogous to that in the office as well.
Mhm. Along with that, so as we get into this automation, are there things like soft skills? How can what soft skills are still critical in this tech-driven hospitality world, or just tech-driven world?
Well, I mean, hospitality is all soft skills, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's it's all about making people feel like they have a great time and having that empathetic understanding and that anticipation of what people's needs might be based on the fact that you've dealt with these situations or similar types of situations before. Uh,
Hmm.
and that's what everybody looks for in any kind of industry, in any industry professional. They're looking for somebody who's trod that path before. And I'm about to move house, for example. It's like I don't move house every week. So the people that do, I rely on them, the professionals, to know how many boxes I need and how long it'll take me to pack them all up and all that sort of stuff. What needs to be taken care of. Every person who's got an area of expertise uh, and is able to deploy that expertise empathetically for their customers' um, benefit, that
Hmm.
putting yourself in somebody else's shoes is really important.
Right. So again, seeing that it'll enhance, but it won't replace that relationship from the human attribute, because
No,
people, it'll only enhance the betterment, but they want that relationship
yeah,
still. And you being a traveler that you are, I'm sure that's something that you value. I know I value, whether it be on a ship, whether it be in a restaurant, whether it be anywhere, a hotel.
yeah,
I just, even at the retail level, I really like going mingling with the salesperson,
yeah.
not necessarily to buy a car. Sorry,
Right.
auto dealers, I don't want to deal with you. I'm good with that. But however, I will say to you, and when I do go into a retail, I want to be, feel that somebody might want to make me feel about what I'm buying. Right?
Right. And I think everybody. I mean, we talk about this at a corporate level sometimes about a sales relationship being a partnership, but I
Mm-hmm.
think every successful sales relationship, even if it's quite a short transactional one, is a kind of partnership between the person and the company, the person representing the company selling the service or the good or whatever it is, and the
Mm-hmm.
customer. So So when those experiences go well, it feels like everybody's on the same side. Yeah.
Excellent. 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 So, what advice do you have for students who may be getting into some tech roles? And I'm sure in your years you've seen the modernization and the emerging roles that are popping up, the different types of things. Whether we're getting into data analytics, people, prompt engineers, and
Yeah.
those types of people who have evolved with new careers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, any advice?
Sure. So, I mean, it's like being a kid in a candy shop, isn't it? When you're in tech these days, it's like you
Hmm.
only have to go into AWS and look at the 3,000 services that they will cheerfully sell you, and then say, oh, I'm going to do a little bit of this today, or I'm going to do a little bit of web development today, or I'm going to do a
Hmm.
little bit of something else. And it's hard. It's easy to get distracted from that and do just a lot of things not terribly well. What I've found, which is not to say that you shouldn't do a lot of things, but what I've always found is that if you do them sequentially, you get better and better at all of them as you go through, because you build experience that's analogous from one task to the next. And so the thing I always say to people is like, look at the experience that you have and how much of it can you tell a story about you had a problem, you had to learn something in order to solve that problem. You then learned how to apply that, and then you were able to solve the problem. So this is true from setting up a website for my husband to deploying a CRM system like Salesforce in our
Hmm.
things. These are all things where you probably didn't have all of the skills to start with. You had a certain amount of time that you needed to complete that action within. You knew that you had to learn a bunch of stuff. There could be soft things that you had to learn, like that project planning, or they could have been technical things that you had to learn. I remember taking a statistics book home over the weekend in order to do the programming the following week and stuff. It might be technical skills like maths or whatever things. When
So
did you
that's
when
a
did you learn
issue.
and how did you apply it? Yeah.
And that's an issue. I mean, and one of the questions I had here is, how important is hands-on experience with systems like a PMS system, CRM system,
Sure.
revenue management platforms. This is why where internships come in and learning, or sometimes you have to take the seat by the pants and I got to run with it and go learn it. Like you said, get a book.
So you get a book, or these days you do hundreds of online courses. I mean, if
Mhm.
you're into Salesforce, Salesforce will cheerfully let you become almost accredited. I think at some quite important levels, just running your own environment or setting it up to run it for some friends or for a non-profit or whatever. Take a bit of a leap on that type of stuff for a non-profit. If you set up a CRM for a non-profit, for example, Salesforce will give you the software pretty much for free. I think so.
Mhm.
Not over a certain size. That's a great way to get some experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way. And so this is so, and that's here why we have this show. It says here, let's keep building the bridge between hospitality and technology together as students.
Yeah.
We need to, you need to really embrace. There's a lot of resources online for free that you can embrace, as you just mentioned. So, and pick a project, notified Salesforce, they'll let you use it for free. All right. So you heard it here on the hospitality show.
Yeah.
So this is an idea for you. Hopefully, that'll be an acorn over the head moment for the students who may be listening. Hint, hint. So hopefully they will. So, and how about let's talk about industry and career readiness.
Right.
What new tech related roles do you think are emerging? Now, I know you're not in a hotel, but from your perspective, what do you see from your angle, being a layperson who travels or deals in the industry, and your husband deals in fashion? There are a lot of things that has a nexus to hospitality, right?
Sure.
So, from and that, what do you see emerging in hotels and resorts, tech related,
Tech related.
that you
Yeah.
might think of? And
um,
I say this, let me just add it. And, it looked at a survey, right? And it said here, which of the following technologies would be a must for you in the future to create a more amazing hotel stay?
right.
Top
Right.
of the list is things like on demand entertainment access. Okay.
Sure.
In the room service. Number
Yeah.
two, but voice controls came in second. They don't want to type it in, they just want to say it, and there's a result, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
And number three, it says here, use my own devices for hotel access. And
Sure.
then 25% said automated comfort controls.
Automated Config. Okay. Yeah.
And then there's another one, which got me. It says smart mirrors and interactive walls to replace TVs. Now that's George Jetson style here, right?
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah,
As
and
long as
I'm updating note for those who may not know George Jetson and Franklin. So I won't use those analogies. I've been banned from doing that. So, um,
so
and then
yeah,
the next one,
let's just make sure those walls and smart mirrors don't have cameras in them. I don't think
which is true, exactly. You have to worry about that. But here's another one for you: facial recognition and biometrics. Scary. Basically, I look at the lock and it opens for me. I don't know. And
well,
then and that
that's
was 12.4
that's
four
not
percent.
that's not crazy. I mean, I have global entry, and when I come into the country through customs and border protection, it takes a picture of my face, and because I have global entry, it knows my face, and I just walk straight through. So that's the door to the country. So I'm the door to a hotel should be
Well,
just
I see a lot of that happening at the local and the domestically travel. They've adopted the biometric guy tells you to look in there, and so they've captured you already, and so eventually they'll move to that. I don't know whether the passport of today will go away down the road, but could be. You never know, right?
I think there's a good opportunity with passports to look at something like a technology like blockchain
Mm.
to see whether those things could change. I mean, there is with the suggestions that you've got there are issues with security. If I'm going to give my biometrics to a company, am I sure that those biometrics are going to remain secure and not get leaked and used in some other way, another place where I use my biometrics
Hmm.
and things? So there are issues that I think the industry is not quite resolved yet with all of these things. We would I do training myself, so I was on CTO training this last couple of days, and we had somebody talking about how you move from what is a good like a coffee bean to what is a product, which is a roasted and ground coffee bean, to what is the service, which is the actual serving of the coffee itself in a in a in a coffee shop, through to an experience. So there's like a hierarchy of things where companies can operate, and I think in the hospitality arena, what you're trying to do is move up that thing. So yes, at a very basic level, you're provisioning a room, but
Mm.
you're also provisioning a room and then a bunch of ancillary services which make it a more complete experience. So down to the toiletries and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Everybody, I think, is trying to move cost effectively up that curve to be able to provide experiences for people that they find memorable, and that they can then differentiate from the experience of going to a luxury hotel in one chain is different from the experience of going to a luxury hotel in another. And often it comes down to these little small details. In I like the toiletries in this one,
Mm.
but that's I think that's an interesting way to look at this. I mean, it's an interesting way to look at all kinds of product sets that we have as people who provide part of that part of the infrastructure that supports those things, and then really think about how do we turn this into an experience that people love and remember and want to come back to.
So over there, and since you have traveled globally, so let's think about this. You make your reservation, you're plane, and you travel.
Yeah.
Now, some people enjoy this, but others don't. This is now. I'm gonna put it out there. The contactless mobile first experience.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that? Skipping the desk. You've made your reservation. They've assigned you your room. You don't have to see Mrs. Mary at the front desk. You just go to your door and voila, put your biometrics or your mobile phone at the door, and it opens your door.
So I I find that a bit utilitarian, but at the same time, if the person at the front desk is only adding delay to my check-in process, then that's that's a great trade-off that I'm going to make. You know,
Mm. Uh,
um, so but if the person at the front desk is actually giving me, and let's say I'm receptive to it, they're actually giving me local, you know, local knowledge. They're giving me ideas about things to do. They're offering me a discount in the hotel restaurant. They're offering me a
Mhm.
complimentary beverage or whatever it is, and things. Then, then there's a reason for me to stop by the front desk, because
Mhm.
then it becomes like I'm not going to remember as memorable unlocking my door, getting in my room and unlocking my door and then just, putting my bags down.
Mhm.
That's an undifferentiated experience these days. I think it's kind of like, you could do that, but
Yeah.
I think you're missing an opportunity there to build a relationship with your customer.
Wow.
Um,
And
but
still, again, the hospitality is about relationships, right? And that's a big thing. So let's talk about this. Go back to that for students' sake, industry and career readiness. What should internships and apprenticeship programs look for in the digital age now? Here we are. You've got somebody coming out who, along the
so,
way, tip throw through
yeah.
the tools of education. What should they be looking for?
So I think what you want to be looking for is an internship that will offer you an outcome. So I've been running internships for a long time in a number of different countries. They take different forms. In some cases, the internships go on for a year.
Hmm.
Uh, and when I was at Lotus, for example, we offered people an industry certification. So they would work as a Lotus Notes developer for the best part of a year. At the end
Hmm.
of it, they would get their Lotus Notes development certificate and things. So they had an industry accreditation that they left the internship with,
Hmm.
whether they came back to us or not. But that's one thing. I think for shorter duration ones, we deal with a lot of interns as well. But again, I think you're looking for a project that will deliver something that people are going to use and that will endure after you've left the internship, because that shows that there was real customer value in it.
You're right, absolutely, and you want to use that to build on and pivot, step by step.
Yeah.
And so, are there any certifications or maybe some platforms that you can recommend for the students looking to upskill? And it's not just necessary students. You have a lot of people who are changing careers these days, and they have to upskill. Do you have anything that you kind of bring to the table, or kind of give somebody some hints? You should be doing this for
So
upskilling.
I think there's a number of technologies that you can install on your own laptop and get going with programming with models and all the rest of it. So um, there are you can run your own models using things like Olama. So that will allow you to download models, including some of the DeepSeek ones, and run them on your own laptop. You don't need to worry about then you're taking corporate data and sending it anywhere else. That's one of the things we do worry about with external models. But so you can do that, and then if you want a front end on that, you can use something like LM Studio, which allows you to see the different modes between the different types of models that you can download and compare and contrast to a certain extent with that. And then there are the agentic frameworks. LangChain is one of the very famous ones at the moment. Um, I would definitely take a look at that. Again, it's something
Mhm.
that you can run either as a small service in the cloud, or you can run on your own laptop and stuff and things. So I would take a look at these things, because these are the places where people are. Again, look for the opportunity. Where is the gap? The gap is between people's understanding of what these technologies can do, and then how to implement them. And that's where the gap is at the moment. So these platforms are all trying to address that gap. So
And one of the things that could happen, and they could discover something to make it even better
absolutely,
by doing.
absolutely, you can, and all of these things are open source. So all of the things
Mhm.
like chain and things like that are open source. So take a look at that. You can contribute back to it. And fix some of those holes. Yeah,
And by the way, it's not just right here where innovation's taking place. By the way, with AI, it's around the globe.
of course. Yes, in all sorts of areas. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And so with that said, let's talk about global innovation.
Yeah.
How does innovation differ across the regions, if at all? Are there trends that are more advanced in certain parts of the world now, or is it from the U.S. versus another country?
I mean, I think you do find variation in how permissive different regimes are about the tools that you can use and what you can use in them. So, the European Union, for example, has a history of being quite protective of its citizens' data rights. Um, that comes with the benefit that people aren't going to sell your data and all the rest of it and things like
Hmm.
they might in other jurisdictions. But at the same time, it can also slow down some of the innovation as well, because you have to be more thoughtful about how you use the data and where it's flowing and what you have rights to and so on.
Right.
I think, so that I think, but I don't see a huge difference, to be honest, in terms of people's desire to use these new technologies and to try them out. I think again, it's like talking about the generations. It's like, of course, you're going to find, I don't know, somebody in a government department in the European Union somewhere that's very, cautious about doing
Mm.
this. And then you're going to find a new startup, I don't know, in Bangalore in India, that's kind of devil may care, try out anything, just see if it works, kind of stuff and things. So um, I think I don't see it I don't see it on a global level, in the sense that there are differences between country to country,
Hmm.
apart from the ones that they've had culturally, where that tends to feed into a kind of continuing reticence, if you like, to try out some of these technologies for fear of, you know,
So, well, with that said, in the U.S. hospitality sector, can they learn from the international tech trends that you see in other parts here in the United States? Can they learn from it, or is
sorry.
it just a collaborative type of thing? What may work over in the European Union may not work here in the U.S. Do you see that?
Um, I think what you see from where I sit, what you see is collaboration across the world on new techniques. So I think
Hmm.
what was clever about DeepSeek was not so much the whether they'd done it on for $6 million versus the $500 million or whatever that other companies had taken to do this. What they'd actually done what was really exciting about their stuff was that um, they'd used a lot of very clever techniques in order to make the best use of the hardware that they had available to them. And
Hmm.
those were all applicable techniques, many of which actually we've been using in IBM. Um, but those are all very applicable techniques for everybody else's training models, which means that the cost of training models comes down and all the rest of it. I do um, there's access to data which is different across the world. So, if you're the Chinese government, you have access to a great deal of your citizens' data, and you have more of them than most other people. So you're able to train on much larger data sets. You're less able to do that if you're in the European Union. The US tends to be, a bit more laissez-faire, but not
Mm.
completely reckless with people's data, and doesn't just claim it and so on and things. So
Well, the
there's
AI Act has made it a little more contingent and controls. I think that's one of the tightest I've seen so far
right.
for a framework for any country, you know,
Hmm.
for what
Yep.
has come on and others to follow. I mean, when we looked at what happened with GDPR, I mean, and we saw that take hold here in the United States.
Yep.
And now, they say, okay, we did that over here for that from European, and now we're going to do the AI Act.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
others are going to follow that innovation and use that, incorporate that into their framework.
Yes. I mean, those of us who are old enough to remember about the stuff that we were doing with, the race to decode the genome and find, the sequence in DNA. There was a concern that, if you gave your DNA, that it could be
Hmm.
used to develop drugs or treatments or whatever it is and things, and there was something personal about you that somebody else had taken and then exploited in order to make money for themselves, but not necessarily with any reward to you. The same kind of thing, I think, applies to the data that we give to social media platforms, the stuff that we leave around that just trains other people's models, you know, without any regard to us. The algorithms that people can build based on the data that they collect or that they can buy from other people, that we kind of leave just by living, if you like. So, yeah, living in a digital world. Yeah, so you leave
Yeah.
traces. Yeah.
Which gets over to digital tools. all right, in our conversation here. So, how have the guest experience changed within the rise of digital tools that you see as a from a customer perspective, from a global? Have you any thoughts on that?
So one of the things that
And
I
the and I'm going to talk about guest expectations changed, where
yes,
for example, we already know Wi-Fi is a must, right?
right, yeah. I think, I mean, there are the things that we talked about a little bit already, which is kind of like the whole digitization of the check-in process, the booking process, and things like that. One of the things that I am seeing now, talking about what I was saying about experiences, is that I am starting to see, people knowing that I'm checking in that week. I'm going to I'm going to be there 3 days. Here are some events that you might be interested in that are happening in the San Jose area or whatever, and things. So those kinds of things are that kind of personalization, that creating an experience, creating an understanding between the customer and things. I find that exciting. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, I'll let wiser minds that are in this industry, kind of talk about it. But I
Well,
think,
digital tools are playing a role. Like, for
yeah,
example, the digital concierge, right? Um,
sure,
you you want to be informed. You want to be able to know prior to coming what are the major events.
yeah, yeah,
Are there any geo issues that I should be aware of,
right,
right? Whether it be geopolitical, and I'm going to put that out there. And so you cater yourself to information, 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 information to be informed. No longer is it about, oh, here's a book and here's a leaflet, and you
right,
look and see what you want.
yeah,
You can even mold, you kind of plan based on what you like, and it makes recommendations.
yeah.
For example, excuse me. So, what are some of the best examples you've seen to improve the guest experience? We've asked that. How can hotels balance the privacy? You talked about the data earlier. With the personalization when using guest data. What's some insights to that one?
So I don't see a conflict between personalization and confidentiality. I don't. I think where I do see a conflict is when people think that they can use the data that I've shared with you in order to personalize an experience somewhere else.
Mm,
That's the being completely transparent about where my data goes when I give it to you is the thing that I maybe it's a personal thing, but it's the thing that I worry about. Do you and I have an understanding that I tell you something, you're not going to go and whisper it in, you're not going to go and gossip about me somewhere else, kind of thing. So
but you
that's
the right to
that's it.
opt in, right, and opt out. You get that right. Uh,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
But that's an issue where so for example, isn't the whole thing about a data model is indicators, right? You're gathering data trends and you're gathering that and building that up, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And these models see that, and then it validates and builds on it. Whether based on that information, they're able to make recommendations of the data that they
Right.
got. Any can you expand on that about guest data?
But I think again is what you see in the models now, which is that you see these modes where models are not storing the information or the
Hmm.
conversations that you have with them. I think that's become because of customer demand that things do not just kind of like I have a conversation with the model and then suddenly what I've put into the model pops up in somebody else's conversation.
Hmm.
That seems to be that seems to be tittle tattle, that
Yeah,
kind of
that is, and that's for example, walls have errors, right? Data sets may have errors, and you don't want that certainly to spill over into something,
right,
and that's where a public LLM versus a private LLM, and people have to think in that concept. You
right,
can't just put everything out there. Case in point, someone put the company's information of their um, some of the things that they're looking to do for forecasting, and now it's in a public LLM. You're sharing that information, and it shows up in somewhere else.
right, right. And that seems to me to be unless that use is explicit and people really do understand it, that seems to me to be not a defensible use of that
Mhm.
data. Yeah. But but if you're collecting information about me and I'm offering it because you need it in order to, it's a bit like like my body size. If you want to buy me a T-shirt, well, I better tell you what my body size is, otherwise it
Mhm.
probably won't fit. So So that seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable exchange of information. But then if I don't know, some other shop down the road also knows what my body size is, that's clear that, you know, that,
Yeah, you're giving it exclusive to somebody else, but not necessarily to the
yeah,
shop down the street. So, yeah. So data, keeping the data, the private insurance, the privacy of the data, it's not shared, and making sure that you abide by it, but offering good governance around that,
yeah,
and good data trust
yeah,
about it as in a sense, they become a custodian of your data, right?
sure, exactly. Yes. And a big part of whether I will trust you again is how well you take care of that data.
Exactly, and that's loyalty and a repeat customer coming back.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: can you share a time when a young professional introduced a tech idea that made a real impact? You're at IBM.
Sure. Yeah.
Around. I mean, I'm certainly this is inspiring. I'm sure to our audience.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I mean I have loads and loads of examples. So I'll give you the most recent one, which is that we have pretty wide latitude in the applications that we develop for researchers, but always with the goal that we're trying to make researchers' lives easier, make them more productive. And one of the things that researchers have to do all across the world, if you're a PhD student or candidate, you have to do this as well, is you have to put together a brief of what your research is going to be.
Mm,
Um, and that can be incredibly time consuming. And, people spend weeks putting these together, for good reason, because, money and funding and all the rest of it relies on these things. But somebody in the product team, early researcher, did some research using an AI, using one of the models that we developed in
hmm
IBM called the Granite model, and was able to use that model in order to kind of like complete or at least put together a first draft of the project proposal itself based on both an understanding of other project proposals that have gone on, so I was able to read those, but also looking at some of the background ideas. That's incredibly powerful for our researchers, and they can do that now with just a click of a button. It's like, please generate the project milestones, please generate the project outcomes, please generate the value statement and things. That didn't come from me, having a bright idea.
hmm
I've always said, if you're waiting for me to have the bright ideas, I get one or two a year, so you're going to be waiting a very long time before you're, you're
Understandable. It's like okay, you leave it to the thinkers. Right? My
setting,
brain is at rest right now. Right.
but setting an environment in which people feel like they can try things out and experiment and things, that is my job. That is my job. Having the ideas and the experiments and really conducting them in a scientific way, so you know what the expected outcome is, and measuring to see whether you get that. That's the province of everybody. Innovation is bottom up and culture is top down.
hmm
So I think there are lots and lots. I think if you do this successfully, then, and I feel like I've done it reasonably successfully, then you get lots of ideas from all sorts of people.
Are you
That
seeing? What about from the younger, or and even those who And I know we talked earlier about the spectrum, not labeling, etc. But experiences bring a lot. It's still there's a value. You see something different through the lens.
but I would say when I say to people who are coming into the organization new, both from straight from college and also maybe from other companies and things. What I always say to them is that, look, big institutions like IBM or any other large company, they have their ways of doing things that they've had for years and years and years. And those of us who operate in those environments find it very hard to see things other ways. When
Mm,
when you come in with no experience whatsoever and you're suddenly confronted with the pages of bureaucratic process that I want you to go through in order to be able to use, I don't know, a data set in your research or something. You're entitled to say, hang on a second, this is bonkers. There must be an easier way to do this. Why do I
hmm
have to do all of this? And it's like, and yes, people will often say, well, we've done it like this for a long time. The reasons why we've done it is because there've been all these mistakes and things like that. But it's all with the fresh, innocent view of how things could be
Hmm.
is very hard for people who are kind of seasoned and buried in the minutiae of how companies operate to see. It's that's very refreshing. You know, people. It's like
So you've actually had an instance where you had somebody who put something that was so far fetched that you had to really ask yourself, but could that really be?
right,
Right? Could that does that make sense instead of discounting it? Right?
right. I mean, I remember one person saying to me, "It's like I remember we had like elaborate approval flows and things like that," and then somebody said, "Well, how many do we ever reject?" And the answer was none. So why have the approval flow?
Yeah.
It's-
Right. Everything's approved.
if everything is approved, why do you know, or if 99% are approved, then why have 99% of people go through this 4-step approval process and things like that?
Mhm.
And it's like it's just like no, that's a question I never thought to ask.
I always tell people, when they have ideas, the idea board, but make a data lake of ideas. Just throw it in there. Just throw
So
it in there.
the,
Let it be there. Let it mush mush.
yeah,
Okay, it's unstructured. But then go ask the question.
there's actually a lot of research on this. The best way to have good ideas is to have lots of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was a competition I think the researchers ran where they said we're going to run a photography competition, and one set of teams was said you have to choose the best image. You have to take the best image and submit the best image, and that's your process is to take
Mm-hmm.
one image and it has to be absolutely the best thing that you can possibly do. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
he's agonized over that. Other teams were told exactly the opposite. Take as many pictures as you want. In fact, take as many pictures as you possibly can, and then choose the best out of that. And of course, the winning pictures in the photography competition always came from the one where there were thousands of
Mm-hmm.
items versus the one where there was only one. So yeah, the best way to have good ideas is to have lots of ideas, write them down, go back over them,
Mm-hmm.
to brainstorm with yourself over them and things like that. Yeah.
Right. Lots of data, lots of data. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. So now we're a data centric environment, data centric world. Everything's about the data.
Yeah.
What about the retention of the data, and as it relates to LLMs and deep learning models? Because
Right.
the data, it depends on that data, right?
Of course.
And
Yeah.
so I often wonder when you look at record retention policies, you know, is there do we need to revisit that? So, for example, you have in some industries 7 years, 3 years, 10 years, right, depending on where you're at.
Right.
The reality is that data feeds these language models over time.
Right.
And so I often think that you should have a moment when you say, okay, this is commission data, then there's decommissioned data,
Yeah.
and we need to dump it somewhere instead of destroying it.
Right. 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 Yes. Exactly. Yeah. We have similar types of policies. I mean, we have to keep some stuff. We have to keep a lot of stuff actually, because we operate in a number of regulated industries, and you have to have those kind of
But
that, that
if
deep.
for example, though,
But we store it somewhere that's kind of cheap and cheerful and takes you a day or two to get it back if you need to. So it goes into storage systems like Glacier and things like that on AWS. We have that. But I think what you're talking about is how long should that data endure in these models as they go through?
right, because that's where the retention I'm talking about. How
Yeah.
do you flush it? How do you create what we call the data junkyard?
Well, and I think this is a problem that the industry has that we haven't solved yet. I think
Mm,
the problem that you're talking about, what I see, in my teams and in other teams, is that in order to get the models up because they're so new, people will spend a lot of time putting together data that they feed into the model, and it's great.
mm.
It's like spring
Oh,
cleaning. It's like your house looks fantastic, but a week later is just as messy as it was before you did the spring cleaning. And I
oh,
think that process of understanding the data refresh, what's still current, what's still useful for
mhm,
AI and LLMs, I don't think I haven't seen a great solution to that. I mean, we have some products that help to do with that, but it's less to do with products and it's more to do with people's mindset and what they're geared up to do and how they maintain things and so on going.
mhm. So with this said,
Um,
what
yeah,
if Let's go on to a couple more for you, and we're coming up on about 6 minutes left in the hour.
Yeah.
How can you? Well, let me ask this question: what one technology do you wish existed in the hospitality industry today? And I know I'm asking you, you're not in it, but you are a consumer of it.
Yeah.
Is there something missing? I mean, I'm sure you've stayed in multiple hotels in a lot of geographies. What
Yeah.
is the one thing that just always like irks you? Like, I
This is
can't believe
this,
they can't have this.
this is not a technology, but it is a thing that disappeared after the pandemic, during and after the pandemic, and that is late checkout.
Mm,
So, so again, if you think about, we used to talk about things as voice of the process or voice of the customer. Well, the voice of the customer wants to stay in the room until they're ready for their flight to go, or to do one last day's sightseeing, or whatever it is. Voice of the process says, well, it's more convenient for the hotel to kick me out at 10 o'clock because I need 4 hours to manage the shift rotation until somebody comes in at 2. So, so it's that flexibility that I think existed a little bit more before the pandemic is something that I really miss.
so a process to have that, or a perk per se, not necessarily a technology to do so.
Yeah,
But
but
however,
I think there are technology answers to this. I think
there is. I mean,
it's a
because you look at,
fostering
you know,
problem, isn't it?
it
Yeah,
doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, oh, okay, I have probability of X amount of reservations. Is it possible? And give you a percentage of time that you can possibly stay
yeah,
automatically without having to call the front desk for it. And you just say, if you want to extend your stay, press such and such, and it goes and tells you the probability of not.
right,
Yes,
yeah,
and it tells you why if
yeah,
it's not going to happen. Or I could, instead of an hour, I could give you a half hour. Instead of 2 hours, check another three. I can have you checked out by one
yeah,
instantly, and you get an instant answer.
yeah,
So there is a technology component to that with
there
data
is,
analytics, right, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and, and artificial intelligence. So there it is. That 3 minute warning that comes on that tells me that we're winding down.
I
Couple
wonder
of
what
quick
that was.
questions. Is there any, as we finalize everything? It's been a pleasure, and it's definitely one of those areas where technology and takes over and discussions of it, and we have a lot to discuss. But let me just ask you this one: how can we ensure innovation is inclusive in accessibility for all students, regardless of their background? What do you think about that?
Well, I think what Sanon and you are doing here, for example, with the Hospitality Tech Show, where you're taking in lots of different voices, you're bringing in students and people who are looking to learn, and then people who are leaders in the industry, and connecting those people. It's all about inclusiveness is about listening to people, isn't it?
Right,
It's
right.
it's it's an act rather than just a fact, which is what diversity is, and so on.
Hmm.
So I think forums like this are really important for that, and then exposing people to the possibilities that they have. I think is also great. Yeah,
And one more question for you: how
sure.
about this? If you were a student today, what would your path look like? Before you heading down the tech path that you have. Not necessarily in the hospitality, but where you're not. But what would that path look like for you as a tech leader?
I think. I mean, my career path has been a little haphazard, to be honest. I think it when you look back, it looks like it's planned, but when you look forward, it's like it's just a series of happenstances and things. I think the one thing that I would say is that I have always been open to taking opportunities when they arose. So I
Hmm.
think that's something that you should be courageous about that in your career. I could have been more courageous about that in my early career, and just put myself out a little bit more.
Well, it's been a pleasure being with you,
Yeah,
and I want you to know, and it's okay to hit the music. I understand. It's not. We got about a minute left. But
sure,
one of the things, it's been a pleasure having you here. I mean, especially you work for IBM. We appreciate the support that you've given this show,
sure,
as we seek to keep building the bridge between hospitality and technology, and we like to do it together with our partners.
yeah.
Certainly, IBM and yourself have come and have been very supportive and helping us on this journey. And we really want you to know we thank you. Uh,
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.
and, And
Such
as before, we can hopefully get some people from IBM to come to the show and support us. Uh, and for you students that who are interested in hospitality, this industry is incredibly, it's growing in technology enhancements. We're in technology in hospitality, and now instead of via meeting, they're actually and dating, they're getting married,
yeah.
and they it's a relationship that's just going to make this stay. So I want to thank each of you for also listening in on YouTube. And you can follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram, and we hopefully next time around getting more input as we grow the show. And again, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And again, for all of us, you just had that moment, and for, as he has stepped in, appreciate you, Danny. Barrett, Barnett, and Vice President of IBM Technologies and Engineering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's
All
great.
right.
Thank you. Thank you for the tough questions.
Well, we try, but thank you very much. All right, we're out of here. All right, thank you.